Agricultural growth is supported by healthy Kharif crop production, higher reservoir levels and better Rabi sowing. Industrial activity is expected to normalize and recover from the lows of the previous quarter. The end of the monsoon season and the expected pickup in government capital expenditure may also provide some impetus to cement as well as iron and steel sectors. Mining and electricity are also expected to normalize post the monsoon related disruptions. I specifically commented on these sectors, that is on manufacturing, on electricity and also on mining and iron and steel as well as on cement, because these were the sectors, particularly in manufacturing, mining and electricity demand, which were the principal factors which pulled down the expected to behave in the current quarter as well as in the next quarter. The Purchasing Managers Index, that is PMI for manufacturing at 56.5 for November remained elevated. The supply chain pressures eased in October-November and fell below the historical average. The services sector continues to grow at a strong pace. PMI services remained steady at 58.4 in November, indicating continued expansion. On the demand side, rural demand is trending upwards, while urban demand shows some moderation on a high base. Government consumption is improving. Investment activity is also expected to improve. On the external front, merchandise exports expanded by 17.2% in October, while services exports continued to post upbeat growth at 22.3% in October. Taking all these factors into consideration, real GDP growth for 2024-25, that is the current year, is now projected at 6.6%, with Q3 at 6.8% and Q4 at 7.2%. Real GDP growth for the first quarter of 25-26 is projected at 6.9% and the second quarter of 25-26 at 7.3%. The risks are evenly balanced. I would now like to focus on inflation. Inflation increased sharply in September and October 2024, led by an unanticipated increase in food prices. Core inflation, though at subdued levels, also registered a pickup in October. Fuel group remained in deflation for the 14th consecutive month in October. In the near term, despite some softening, lingering food price pressures are likely to keep headline inflation elevated in the third quarter, that is in the quarter October to December. Going ahead, a good Rabi season would be critical to the softening of food inflation pressures. Early indications point to adequate soil moisture content and reservoir levels, conducive for Rabi sowing. The estimates of record Kharif production should bring relief to elevated prices of rice and tur dal in particular. Vegetable prices are also expected to see a seasonal winter correction. On the upside, the evolving trajectory of domestic edible oil prices following the hike in import duties and rise in their global prices need to be monitored closely. Manufacturing and services firms surveyed by the Reserve Bank point to firming up of input costs and selling prices in the fourth quarter of the current financial year, that is in the quarter January to March. Taking all these factors into consideration, CPI inflation for the current financial year, that is 24-25, is projected at 4.8%, with Q3 at 5.7%, Q4 at 4.5%. Going into the next financial year, CPI inflation for the first quarter of 25-26 is projected at 4.6% and Q2 at 4%. The risks are evenly balanced. Now what do these inflation and growth conditions mean for monetary policy? I have described the growth conditions, I have described the inflation conditions. Now what do all these factors mean for monetary policy, and that is what I would like to now highlight. The near-term inflation and growth outcomes in India have turned somewhat adverse since the last monetary policy in October. The medium-term prognosis on inflation suggests further alignment with the target, while growth is expected to pick up its momentum. Persistent high inflation reduces the purchasing power of consumers and adversely affects both consumption and investment demand. The overall implication of these factors for growth is negative. Therefore, price stability is essential for sustained growth. On the other hand, a growth slowdown, if it lingers beyond a point, may need policy support. The Reserve Bank's anti-inflationary monetary policy stance has been a crucial factor in bringing about a significant disinflation. Going forward, as food price shocks wane, headline inflation is expected to ease and realign with the target as per our projections, which I just read out. At present, it is necessary to draw on the flexibility provided by the neutral stance of monetary policy to wait for and monitor the incoming data for confirmation of the decline in inflation. The gains achieved so far in the broad direction of disinflation, notwithstanding the recent upticks, need to be preserved. At the same time, the growth trajectory and the evolving outlook also need to be monitored very closely. At this critical juncture, prudence and practicality demand that we remain careful and sensitive to the dynamically evolving situation with all its complexities and ramifications. A status quo in monetary policy in this meeting of the MPC has thus become appropriate and essential. I would now like to turn to liquidity and financial market conditions. System liquidity as represented by the net position under the LAF, that is net liquidity adjustment facility, it continued to remain in surplus during October and November on account of higher government spending, despite a significant increase in currency in circulation during the festive season and capital flows. Of course, towards the end of November, for a few days, the liquidity became tight, but overall, I think there was adequate liquidity both in October and November, and it remained in surplus. Given these conditions, the Reserve Bank mainly conducted variable rate reverse repo operations, that is VRRR operations, to absorb surplus liquidity. To alleviate temporary liquidity tightness because of large GST outflows, however, fine-tuning variable conducted intermittently during October and November. The two-way liquidity operations of the Reserve Bank ensured close alignment of the interbank overnight rate with the policy repo rate. Transmission to the credit market has been satisfactory. As you would have noticed, as in the previous monetary policy statements, lot of data is given in the footnotes. So those of you who are interested may have a look at the footnotes, because the data in the footnotes justify and back up whatever I am saying as a part of my statement. Now, even as liquidity in the banking system remains adequate, system liquidity may tighten in the coming months due to tax outflows, increase in currency in circulation, and volatility in capital flows. To ease the potential liquidity stress, it has now been decided to reduce the cash reserve ratio, that is to reduce the CRR of all banks to 4% of net demand and time liabilities, that is NDTL, and this will be done in two equal tranches of 25 basis points each.
हाँ, मैं सुरेंद्र सिंह चिताला, सूबा कोर कमेटी मेंबर किसान मजदूर संघर्ष कमेटी पंजाब।
सर आज जो आगे मूव करे हरियाणा के किन बंदे को लीड करना, आप भी लीड कर रहे, थोड़ा बताओ।
हाँ, हम सुरेंद्र सिंह चिताला हम भी लीड कर रहे हैं, इसी तरह सतनाम सिंह पन्नू वो भी लीड कर रहे हैं, इसी तरह सरजीत सिंह पूल जो साडे क्रांतिकारी के सूबा आगू है वो भी लीड कर रहे हैं। तो जथे की अगुवाई हम लोग करेंगे। 101 आदमी का मरजीवड़ों का जथा आगे मूव करेगा आज लगभग 12 बजे।
अगर टीयर गैस छोड़े जाते हैं, कोई लाठीचार्ज होता है, उसका सामना भी
बिल्कुल मरजीवड़े की डेफिनेशन ये होती है भी जबरदा मुकाबला सब्र के साथ करना, क्योंकि आज वो दिन बहुत महान दिन है। आज के दिन श्री गुरु तेग बहादुर जी ने लोकाई की खातिर मानवता की खातिर दिल्ली चांदनी चौक में अपना शीश दिया था। वो बिल्कुल उदाहरण हमारे सामने है। बिल्कुल जे कोई टीयर गैस अथरू गैस कुछ भी छड़े गोलियां चलाए, शांतमय ढंग ना उसका मुकाबला करेंगे, क्योंकि हिंदुस्तान सरकार का मोदी जी का चेहरा दीन दुनिया के सामने नंगा करेंगे। क्योंकि बोलते थे सब बोलते थे, बुद्धिजीवी बोलते थे यार जे नहीं जान देते ट्रालियां तो पैदल चले जाओ, ट्रैक्टर ट्रालियां नहीं जाने देते तो हम फैसला कर लिया भी पैदल जाएंगे। जे पैदल नहीं जान देते तो फिर सरकार की नैतिक हार है, हम नैतिक तौर पे जीतेंगे। इसमें लीड़ा कपड़ा है, गर्म लोई है, पानी है, इसी तरह और बिस्कुट है, कुछ सामान रखा है, क्योंकि पैदल चलना है। रोज का 15 किलोमीटर पैदल सफर करेंगे तो जे हमको जाने देते हैं। हम चाहते हैं भी जंतर मंतर चौक में जाने दे, हमको रामलीला ग्राउंड में जहाँ ही सरकार को सुविधा वहाँ बैठने दे। तो इसीलिए किट हर मरजीवड़ा तैयार बर तैयार है।
इकट्ठे भेजना पन्नू जे 3 बंदे चलते भेजे अभी इतने पाकिस्तानी तैयारियां कौन जत्था लीड कर रहा, कितने बंदे जत्था जा रहे हैं।
हाँ जी, जो दोनों फोरमां वालों ऐलान किया गया वा 6 दसंबर जो इतिहासक दिन आ, ये गुरु तेग बहादुर साहब का अज शहीदी दिन भी आ। 6 दसंबर 1975 ਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸ਼ਹੀਦੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਸੀ ਮਨੁੱਖੀ ਹੱਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਾਂ ਮਨੁੱਖੀ ਹੱਕਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ।
ਜੋ ਔਰੰਗਜ਼ੇਬ ਨੇ ਮਨੁੱਖੀ ਹੱਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਾਣ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ, ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਮਨੁੱਖੀ ਹੱਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਾਣ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਵਾ। ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੇਸੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਧੱਜੀਆਂ ਡਾਈਆਂ, ਸੰਵਿਧਾਨ ਦੀਆਂ ਧੱਜੀਆਂ ਡਾਈਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ, ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਾ ਕੁਚਲਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਵਾ, ਦੱਬਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਉਸ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਅੱਜ 101 ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਥਾ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਵੱਲ ਕੂਚ ਕਰੂਗਾ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਐਲਾਨ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ। ਉਸ ਦੀ ਅਗਵਾਈ ਮੈਂ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਸਿੰਘ ਪੰਨੂ। ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ